go ahead and get started. Just normal announcements, 50-50 tickets, door prize tickets, fair sign up, meal sign up, and fair entry forms are all at the back table. So a lot of stuff tonight. So if you're interested in any of that, see them at the back table and they'll take care of it. Tonight we got Lynn Williams with Thermal Mite Control with us. I think we've seen you for the last, every 2 weeks for the last month, so haven't we, Lynn? He was at the state meeting and he was at our Kim Flottam event a couple of weeks ago, so he's looking forward to coming and talk to us tonight, and we've been talking to him about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Lynn and he can get started with this program.
First off, did everybody go see and hear Kim Flottam? Yeah. Folks, I'm in 18 conferences in the last 24 months. That was the best presentation I ever heard. When I take 5 pages of notes and can't wait for it to be online, that's one of the smartest beekeepers I've ever had the pleasure of associating with. Ken Edwards, would you stand up, please? Make yourself familiar with Ken. He's my rep for Central North Carolina. Good beekeeper, a lot of experience with my product. A little introduction about myself. I spent 45 years in industrial automation and control, solving problems in the industry. Every industry, from clean rooms to robots and high-speed packaging machines and processing. 19 years as a beekeeper. It was so easy starting out. Beekeeping for Dummies, the book was all I needed for 12 or 13 years. Then I started hearing about the Roaring Mite, small hive beetles. Joined a local club to learn more. My family has always been organic farmers. And I got into bees because, in fact, we were not getting enough pollination. I was gearing up for retirement. I had 37 hives across 2 counties on produce farms. Had a scientist from Clemson University come speak to us, went through all the issues, and her last statement was, if you want to stay organic, do powdered sugar 4 times a year on your brood frames. In South Carolina, at 98 to 100 degrees, 370 brood frames in August is brewed. By November the 1st, I've lost 21 out of 37 hives to the roar. By spring of the next year, I had 6 hives left. And it drove me crazy. I mean, I've been solving problems all my life. So I started going to conferences, listening to all the presentations I could about Roaring Mite. Anything I could get my hands on, I downloaded studies. The only thing I believe, as far as studies, had to be signed off by a scientist. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not true. So with that, rather than get ahead of myself, we'll get into the presentation. This is our enemy, Aurora Destructor. They're small, but they're very devastating. Roaring mites travel on the bees. They pick them up every spring during pollination. They end up in your beehive. Scientific name, Aurora Destructor, originally a pest out of Asia, probably entered the United States due to international trade. Arrived in '87. All beekeeping countries have them except Australia. They've had a quarantine on for 30 or 40 years. When they find evidence, they burn the hives, and all of them within a certain radius of any evidence is found of it. Parasites for our larvae and adult bees, tremendous vector for diseases. It's been confirmed there's 11 different viruses that the Aurora Mite ends up with them, through them, with our bees. Can be seen with the naked eye. New mites are clear to tan. Older mites are more reddish and brown. Mites live off the fatty tissue, making the bees anemic. They're infected with 11 different viruses, and a severe infestation of mites can be seen on the backs of bees. I think everybody knows the answer to this question. There's not a hive in America that doesn't have some presence of Aurora mite. If they don't, they will very shortly. They spread just like anemia. The biggest point about this is we have to accept that we got a new member of the family, and it's not going away. Here's the cycle. Here's what happens. Your queen lays an egg. It starts developing. You got a pupa. And that larvae calls for feeding. But right when it's time to be capped off, it puts off a totally different scent and hormone. That the queen mite is hanging around right there on top of those cells. And when she smells that particular scent, she immediately goes into the cell, and she is capped off with the larvae. Now she lays up to 8 eggs. The first one is always a male. Can be up to 7 females, and that's for reproduction. She's going to guarantee that her livelihood, as far as her family, proceeds forward. You have to be proactive nowadays. It was real easy many years ago. You got to inspect your hives. You got to do alcohol washes. And the whole key is test before you treat. Now, my studies, and then the studies that were published in American Bee Journal, the scientists are changing their counts. It used to be, if you had a 3 count, 3 mites per 300 bees in June or July, you were okay. That's not the case now. Anyone that was at the North Carolina Convention heard the gentleman from Kentucky. He revised that. If you see a 1 count, you need to treat immediately. And we'll get into the numbers here in just a little bit. Left-hand side, that's coming out of winter. The orange is the mites, blue is our bees. So as you can see, as soon as spring arrives, the bee population explodes. But what happens is that line crosses in August and September. The bees are on the decline, the mites explode, and this is a critical time right now we're in right now, because your bees are laying for the tougher, hardier overwinter bees. If there's not overwinter bees, it's going to be a real struggle to get through the winter, especially a winter like we had last year. I mean, when my pond freezes over in South Carolina with snow on it, it's cold, solid. Phoretic versus reproductive. This study was completed by Dr. Hahn up at Michigan State. When the mite arrives in the hive, it actually makes a characteristic decision between day 5 and day 11. And that is to either live off the bees and the body fats of the bees, or be reproductive. And so what we found, confirming my work, and it was published in the American Bee Journal last December, is if you have a 3 count in June or July, you got over 700 reproductive mites in your brood frames. If they don't multiply to 2 or 3 to 1, inside of 30 to 45 days, you're on the verge of a collapse. And you don't understand why. 5 and up, you can have 1,000 to 1,500 reproductive mites. Now the studies have shown that the count of reproductive versus phoretic that lives off the bees can be as higher than 80% of those mites are in the reproductive category. That's scary. What is a mite bomb? Wow. Here you are, you've done the proper things and treated your hives for mites. No matter what it is that you've used. But you got a neighbor within 2 miles or less that does no treatment. When their hive collapses, bingo, your bees go in and rob, and they bring all the mites back with them. Randy Oliver, who manages 3,000 or 4,000 hives there in Northern California, in a conference in Georgia, at a meeting I had with him afterwards, he actually has a Excel spreadsheet map of all the apiaries around him, and he goes to every one of them, coming out of winter every year, checking to see what they're going to do for treatment. And he's got red marks on the ones that aren't going to do anything. And that's his greatest fear. And one thing he'll do is he grafts a lot of his own queens, pulls them right off his strong hives. But when it happens to one of his hives, a lot of times to protect the other 3,000 or 4,000 hives, that hive's gone. It's off the yard. And it is destroyed. I mean, he can't take the chance. He's got too big of an investment there. Knowledge is power. Learn as much as we can. The varroa life cycle and its relationship to the honeybee life cycle, including the fact that varroa reproduce only brood cells. More brood, more drone, more varroa. Because more brood equals more mice, population peaks between August and October. Varroa prefers shade versus sunny hive locations. And there are many options for varroa control and how they work. But varroa keeps adapting. That's why you see a new product coming out all the time, trying to overcome this problem. The reason the shade is better for varroa is because its multiplication rate is higher, down around 90 to 91 degrees versus our queens prefer 94.5 for laying. I've even talked to some scientists that were trying to breed a DNA strain of queens where the bees would keep the hive at around 90 degrees. And I'm talking with them up in the Midwest, and I'm going, well, that's great, but by the time you populate the world with this new strain of queens, how long is it going to take? 5,000 years? 10,000 years? We got an immediate problem, and it's serious. Willful ignorance solves nothing. We're in a whole different ballgame nowadays. Clemson University IPM study, what we're going to focus on here is physical control, chemical control. Chemical, that was our answer when the mice showed up in '87. So what we've got is synthetic pesticides played a major role in the United States for bee pests like varroa mites following their discovery in the U.S. Most beekeepers quickly jumped on the pesticide treadmill beginning in the late 1980s, and many simply wanted to know when to place the pesticide in the hive and when to remove it. A similar move, calorie-based, was adopted by the agricultural industry following World War II. Some beekeepers elected to illegally use products not labeled for beekeeping pests, such as varroa. Within a few years of repeated use, beekeepers began to report that products like Avistan and Checkmate were no longer effective for varroa mite. Oxalic acid. Most effective when brood is not present. This product is completely misapplied a lot. Dr. Jennifer Berry's treatment in August when mites peak, one must cage the queen and break the brood cycle. Her study was published in Bee Culture. There's the link. MSDS, potential acute effects, very hazardous in case of skin contact, eyes, or inhalation. Severe overexposure can cause lung damage and death. Protective suits, gloves, and respirator required. This is right off the website for the people who manufacture this product. 27, two beekeepers group out in Illinois. They used oxalic acid when brood was present over that year. Then in the fall, they were so overrun with varroa mite counts, they backed up and treated with Apogard and Apogard and a follow-up
oxalic acid with no brood. They still ended up with a 50% loss. Mite away quick strips. Apply 2 strips near the edge of brood box for 7 days. Temperature's got to be between 50 and 92 Fahrenheit. Honey supers can be on the high. MSDS sheet. Acute health effects hazards to skin, eyes, and lungs. Disposable gloves required. Wash the suit after use. Prolonged contact with solid product or vapor may produce injury to your eye, nasal, and respiratory tract irritation in the skin. Apivar. 45 to 56 day treatment when bees can move freely. No honey supers on high. This is a real important thing that beekeepers ignore. You're doing this treatment with honey. Not suitable during the honey flow. Your supers can be installed 2 weeks after treatment. MSDS, skin contact, open cuts should not be exposed. Entry into the blood system through open cuts may have harmful effects. Long-term use and exposure may be harmful to one's lungs. Avistan. Apply strips in brood box for 45 days. Here again, no honey supers. Reinstall honey supers after the treatment. MSDS, keep out of the reach of children. Harmful if absorbed through the skin. Avoid contact with eyes, skin, and clothing. If contact with eyes, rinse for 15 to 20 minutes. Same with the skin. Call the Poison Control Center if you have made this kind of contact with it. Handle only with chemical-resistant gloves. Check mite. Hang 2 strips in the middle of the brood box for 45 days. Here again, no honey supers on the hive. They can be installed 2 weeks after the treatment. Here's your hazard statement. Symptoms of runny nose, eyes, tearing, tightness of the chest. The severe symptoms are fatigue, vomiting, convulsion, low blood pressure, cardiac irregularity, and coma. Symptoms may not appear for up to 12 hours after you've been exposed. What's a beekeeper supposed to do? This is what got me on the trail because I refused to use any of these products. IPM Physical Control number 6 includes the use of heat, cold, light, humidity, carbon dioxide, ventilation, or sound to control pests. Most pests have physical limitations, and that affects their activities or survival. Freezing temperatures are an excellent way of killing or controlling wax moths and small hive beetles in stored drum comb. Light and ventilation are also recommended for control of wax moths in stored comb. Heat has been shown to affect varroa. Survival and placement of colonies in the sun may aid in control of this pest. Placement of colonies in the sun will also create drier soil conditions, which disrupt the life cycle of small hive beetles. Oh, by the way, if you got fire ants, let them move in. They eat the eggs and larvae in the ground of small hive beetles, and I hate them. And I've been doing that practice for 12 years now, and my small hive beetle counts have gone to nothing. Okay, in 1996, Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Study with the USDA performed a 1-year study in apiaries in Vermont and New Hampshire. Bees were removed, placed in a hive box, treated with thermal temperature. The results were 82 to 98% termination of trachea, Jacobson, which we hear very little of anymore, and varroa mite. This process was very simple but old compared to today's technology, but it worked. This is posted online, certified, right there. But we were already 10 years down the path of using pesticides. So the Europeans picked up on it. That and the Japanese studies where the bees actually gather over a Japanese hornet, heated up and killed the hornet that's trying to raid their honey. Dr. Leinhardt, upon reviewing the studies, The bees using temperature to terminate hornets and other pests started working on using temperature to terminate the varroa mite. The discovery was by raising the temperature in the beehive to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, the mite is terminated even under cap brood. That was a huge breakthrough right there, because that is where the problem is. The only other product that will kill the mites under cap brood is formic acid, but you end up with it all in your wax and traces of it in your honey. The design was a thermal hive using solar sunlight to raise the temperature in the hive. Testing was done showing results versus formidol, which is formic acid, and veridol, which is amitraze. Very popular products in the European market. Only one problem. It's $650 a hive. And when I was developing my thermal unit, I said, there's no way a beekeeper's gonna pay in America $650 a hive. It works. They've got studies going back as far as 10 years. I've been very fortunate over the last several years to be able to snag 2 or 3 of them before they took them off the internet. Is there an American product? Yes. Is there ongoing studies using temperature? Yes. This is a thermal image of mites. The larger parts right here are trash. Excuse me. But all the small ones are actual live mites out there on your brood frames. And I got oodles of more stuff that I've done that I'm working on. Is there an organic solution? (104 to 106 degrees) terminates the varroa mite even under cap brood. It will terminate your hive beetles, but they will come back in after the treatment if you've got a lot of them in your environment. Without the use of pesticides, you have 3 treatments a year. 30 days after the pollen flow starts, your nectar flow. Because the bees go out and pollinate and they pick up the mites. And that's when they enter into the hive, and then they make a decision to be reproductive or stay foraging. You do it again in August, first part of September. That way you terminate the mites when their population peaks. You do it in October to ensure that you don't have any mites left over for the next spring, because the mites will go dormant. One unit will service multiple hives. Extra internal sensors are available with quick disconnects, so one can install them only one time for multiple hives. I have a beekeeper in Virginia that's got 30 hives. He bought 29 extra sensors. And he spent more money in sensors than he did in the thermal unit, and he loves it. But the biggest factor right there was a business partner that ran the business, and there was an apiary manager that managed the bees. And he looked at his partner and said, "You're buying extra sensors." That was a classic moment. It does require 120 volts to operate. But I've probably prompted to sell poor, small, $90 to $130 generators. No offense, ladies, they're no bigger than an oversized purse. It only draws 220 watts, which is 2 amps. And a small generator is very inexpensive. And the smallest one you can buy is 1,000 watts. So you can actually do 3 treatments simultaneously while you're out in remote locations. Questions?
I'll soak it in for a minute.
The 104 doesn't hurt the brood?
No. Takes 116 to kill the bees, I had to know. Here's the thing about the difference here. When you're drawing air in the front of the hive and warming it up, it flows out the top of the hive. When you have moving air, you have no problems with fresh eggs, you don't have any problems with open brood, no problems with cap brood. Now what happens is, after you do a thermal treatment, within 3 days, the mites die under the cap brood. At that point in time, the bees actually smell the decaying mite. They go in and uncap that brood and remove a live larvae with mites attached to it. And we got pictures of this, and Tim Hester up here just north of us bought a unit last July, and I made him aware of that. So he took a lot of time and was watching his hives after he treated them. And they're pulling the larvae out and flying off. And he couldn't figure out where they were taking it. So he started walking a circle, a radius circle, around the hive. Bees are a very sophisticated, wonderful animal because they fly exactly 30 feet and deposit that larvae. Not in the same place. They'll scatter it exactly 30 feet out in front of the hive. Beekeepers in Texas have confirmed this. Emily Taylor, a scientist, has confirmed it. We've got confirmations from all over the U.S. And in Texas, they've actually been doing mite thermal treatments at 110 degrees Fahrenheit, which had me a little bit on the edge. But they were sophisticated enough that at 116 degrees there, the bees are bearding and bringing water in enough to where the internal temperature is only 97 degrees with an ambient of 116. But that's above the temperature that the queen likes to lay at. A queen never stops laying if she's healthy. But even at those higher temperatures, she will still lay a small number of eggs, waiting on better weather, fall pollen flow, and things like that to gear up for overflow. Yes, ma'am.
I see these instructions that says you hold the control button until all the LED lights and then you release it, and that's it?
Well, what you do is you plug it in, you'll get a series of flashing lights. Then one of 3 lights will turn solid, and that's for future use for things like phone apps, wireless, for laptops and things of that nature, which I don't think the beekeepers will pay for right now. We've already done some development. There's a button on the front, right there in the center of the controller. You press it firmly. After you put it, let's just walk through the setup. First thing you do, let's take this off. And this off. First thing you do is you slide my unit in, and then there's a special closure stick here. It has 2 slots. The small one is for my sensor and power cable. The other slot will allow the bees to come and go freely. But more important, it's for oxygen. Because if you close this off and you oxygen started the bees, you'll have a kill. And the change in this stick happened about 1.5 years back when a beekeeper, a master beekeeper, had done 8 mite kills, got distracted, walked away, didn't pull the stick at the proper time, and killed about 2,500 bees. So you have to be diligent, and we'll walk through this. So this stick goes on like so. You take some painter's tape, tape the ends down to your bottom board, because a strong hive will do everything they can to push that stick out. Then you set your honey supers off. You take a pocket knife, make a small groove in the very back of the hive body, and you install this sensor right here. And everything comes as a kit, so that sensor's already in the back. It even has these little telephone staples that you can use to secure it to the top of the brood frame. Now the reason for that is, in this thermal belt that's widely used in the industry to de-ice airplanes, keep transmissions that are already warm so that when they fire them up, everything works, has a matching thermistor in this thermal belt. In our industry, it's what we call closed loop technology. So I'm getting data and information from 2 locations. One, where I'm creating temperature, the other one, reading the temperature in the hive body. I can maintain between 2 and 3/10 of 1 degree accuracy. I have safety protocols in there. If it goes a certain amount over, it will completely shut down and stop working. I've never had that to occur, but it's there if needed. After you install your sensor, you have this standard Lowe's, Home Depot insulation board. You buy a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet, used quite common in the construction industry. This gets placed right here, like so. Then you put a honey super, either one, because we're gonna have some weight to seal this to the hive body. You press this button right here, you will get a blue flashing light. When you have a green flashing light, you actually remove this stick, and the bees can come and go freely. There's an internal timer that starts running. 2.5 hours later, you will have a solid blue and a solid green light, and the process is complete. It is a process, but we got 456 units now out performing flawlessly with our beekeepers. Primarily for the Midwest East, we do have about 10 units on the West Coast now. Upon completion, your stick is already off. You set your honey supers off. Remove this. Screwdriver, pop your sensor out, and you go to the next hive. I've got a beekeeper in upstate New York. His name is Mike Martino. He bought a unit last April, 100 hives. He only bought 2 units. I said, Mark, you gotta have more than that. He's got them for honey and pollination on the apple crops up there. Him and his partner got so efficient at it. He called me up, he said, I told you I didn't need 2 units. They're doing 5 and 6 thermal treatments a day. And in the spring with good weather, he's done in about 17 or 18 days. And he said, it's amazing what happens when you take the Florida Mite out of the picture. I've got 2- and 3-year-old hives in the house. As bad as our spring was for nectar and pollen, 5 and 6 supers full of honey, June 15th. Now the scariest thing in the world for me at my age is on a step ladder, trying to pull a super off the top. And I'm like, if I topple this thing over, I can't get off this ladder fast enough to get away. Next question. Yes, sir.
Now, that's on a single roof box. What if you have double roof?
We're going to talk about double deeps here in a minute, but it will work on a double deep. You got twice the volume of air to generate. It takes twice as long to reach the mite temperature. If you have a screen bottom, you actually have to put your IPM board, cut your 2 wedges, and jam that board up against that bottom screen because it will draw air. The problem is that it's amazing our bees survive in our boxes that we furnish. That wood is only a 0.4 R-rated insulation factor. 0.4. It's not even a 1. You look at this other thermal image camera, there's a crack in that box. It looks like blood pouring out. So you look through your boxes, and if you see any signs at all of an old age crack or anything like that, you tape it up. The other thing with your double deeps, because you're rotating them, you have to use this painter's tape. Tape it off on the bottom, all the way around, tape your joint here, because it will hemorrhage temperature. And that delays the amount of time to get there. So what will happen at cooler temperatures, we recommend 80 degrees and above for double Ds. If you're below 80, you gotta have some help. Now we went through this in the Midwest last year. We probably had a dozen beekeepers in October that were so desperate to try to terminate the Florida mite, they were trying to do double deep, single deep mite kills at 55 to 58 degrees. I was on the phone with them. I said, do any of y'all have bee cozies? Well, a couple of them have bee cozies. That's the insulated wrap that fits your hive body and slides over it. They were able to do a mite kill. One guy had a sleeping bag. He went and grabbed it and wrapped his hive in it. But we ran into another issue, and we've seen it occur in the south once or twice. When they removed the stick, there was so much cold air rushing in, we'd go back to the warming mode, the blue flashing light. So I had a guy call me in northern Ohio, and it was cycling back and forth. Well, our timer only runs when we're on a green flashing light. I said, grab a reducer stick, standard reducer stick, put it on there with a 3-inch opening. He did, it settled right down, he completed his cycle. And he said, by the way, did it matter that I got 25-mile-an-hour gusting winds coming off the night? I said, I don't think so. Yes, it matters a lot. There was another question over here.
So it's about 6 hours to treat a double body? Is what you're saying?
No, it's still 2.5 hours. But what can happen is, I have an automatic shutdown in the controller. If you have not reached mite temperature within 45 minutes, it's gonna shut down. We're trying to keep the stress level on the bees with temperature as low as possible. On double deeps, what we have found is, you can unplug it, plug it in, let the controller reset, start again, and typically 6 to 10 minutes after that, we're close enough, we're just not quite there. But we're close enough that then it'll go into the mite set point temperature. If it doesn't, you gotta find where you're hemorrhaging temperature. You got a crack or something there. Ken, would you make sure that every table's got one of these? Because this is something that I discussed with Ken Floden. Y'all could pass some of those around and get them to Ken.
Have you ever tried it with sliding in where normally you put in the bottom board, you know, the corrugated cardboard? You probably tried that at first on a screen bottom.
Yeah, and I actually had a guy that made some modifications on 8 frames, and he could slide it right in on the rails. But 10 frames, and the problem with our rails from our manufacturers and IPN boards are so bad. They're so inconsistent. And I'm gonna need one too, Ken. I don't want to have anything to talk about. I tried to get this question in front of Kim Floden before they quit taking questions. I didn't make it the other day. But I had a great discussion with him afterwards. And when I asked him about double deeps and screen bottoms, that I've traveled all through the Midwest, and it was like everybody was using them. Kim's first answer was, it is absolutely wrong. He said, the second answer is the same as number 1. And then number 3, we went into the discussion as far as why. So if y'all take a minute, we're going to work down through these. Double deep hive bodies were originally introduced to produce more bees, which is incorrect. With the aurora mite showing up, everybody's like, well, we'll try to produce more bees to overcome the numbers of the mite. It's not humanly possible. In a single hive body, you got over 60,000 cells for the queen to lay in. The queen will lay 1,500 to 2,000 cells per day, which equals out between 32 and 34,000 eggs in the magic number of 22 to 23 days. You got 25 to 28,000 cells still available for her to lay eggs in. She cannot overpopulate a single deep hive. Mathematically, it's impossible. You can do, when you take aurora mite out of the picture, and this is common in Australia, I met with them 8 weeks ago in Missouri. They don't have aurora present yet. They do 3 to 4 splits in a single hive every year. because they don't have the problem with the mite. Number 2, item B. The queen and cluster, when winter arrives, they move up into the second hive body for the winter. This leaves a large volume of cold air in the bottom hive body. The bee's metabolic rate will go up as high as 500% to ensure that the cluster stays warm. And the queen, that's their livelihood. So what happens at a 500% metabolic rate, they die off prematurely during the winter. The cluster gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I've looked at that because I got double deep slide test with screen bottoms. And I've seen this occurrence just by using an expensive thermal image camera. I can check it 1 week, I can go back to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, and you see the cluster getting smaller and smaller. Which means when you get to spring, if the hive survives, you're 22 to 24 days when she starts laying before you got new bees coming up. You're missing almost a month of pollen and nectar that is readily available because the hive is weakened due to the cold air in the bottom hive body. All right, the bees store honey in the hive body brood frames, typically in the corners. Bees do not move left and right to feed. Dr. Charles Owen studied this many years ago. The bees actually cluster like a teardrop. So here's what happens. Cold weather, one side migrates up to the food and honey stores, on the other side is migrating down. All winter long, you get some warm days, and that's how they work. All right, here you got a double D. She's been laying in the center 4 or 5 frames. When she has moved up there, there's not honey ready available unless you got a couple of supers directly over her. Then she's battling the cold air at the bottom also. So starvation will occur. Here's a number you need to watch. In the South, that study clearly stated you need 2 full honey supers as food storage for your bees to get through the winter. A big mistake beekeepers make is we get a wonderful fall bloom and they rob their bees going into it or during that fall bloom. In the North, that same study said 3 full supers on a single deep, and you may have to even feed those bees with a severe winter. Screen bottom boards. Oh, a great marketing thing. Screen bottom, you got an IPM board, you slide it in, you can watch for dead mites. It's been proven in studies for over 10 years now that if you have evidence of mites on an IPM board, you're already in serious trouble. You have to do alcohol washes to determine your mite count. And even that's skewed, but at least it gives you an indication of how many mites per 300 bees you've got. The other thing with screen bottoms, they allow a lot of cold air to come in the wintertime. I mean, it just draws right in there. We're blessed this year for those of you who have screen bottoms, and hopefully I pray that you'll change over to single deeps next year and solid bottoms. We have midterm elections. The losers do not pick up their political signs. I started with screen bottoms. I know. You take a razor knife, you cut them, slide them right in the front entrance of the hive. The bees will wax seal it and cuts that cold air off. Bingo's a solution, thanks to our politics. The other bad thing about it is a lot of beekeepers in the spring and fall reinstall their IPM boards but don't check them regularly. In a solid bottom hive, the bees will actually keep that bottom board spotless clean. When that trash falls through that screen, they cannot get to it. Well, guess what lays eggs in there? Small hive beetles. The size of the screen is too large to keep small hive beetle from migrating directly into your hive. So now they've gone from trash to royalty with honey and places to lay eggs and produce more small hive beetles. Bottom screens are very poor for ventilation. Here's why. We all use telescopic lids and inner lids. If you look at your inner lid for ventilation, you might got about 1 inch to 1.25 inches slot. Now you're going to have an open screen bottom, and you can have bearding this high on your hive in the summertime. Bees are going out gathering water, placing it in cells, standing over it, using their wings to try to air condition and drive that temperature down. I picked this up from the Australians. But one thing I did was different, is I had plenty of supers left over from my losses years ago. They put 3 7/8-inch diameter holes in the front and the rear. On the inside, they take a tight poly screen and staple it over the hole to keep small hive beetles from migrating in. This goes on top of your last super. Then your inner lid or sugar water feeder in your lid. I've got monster hives at home, 5 and 6 supers. I got a double deep with 5 supers on it. When I installed these, 1st of July, I have had 0 bearding the rest of the summer. And I've had temperatures in South Carolina of 101, 102 degrees. High humidity. When the bees are not bearding and gathering water, guess what they're doing? They're foraging for pollen and nectar. They go back to work. Plus, a steady airflow through there is very healthy for bees. You don't have mold, you don't have spores from the mold, you don't have some other issues involved, because if you got airflow, you're in good shape. And it's surprising, traveling through the north over the last year, in Ohio, Michigan, upstate New York, they actually turn their hives to the northwest, which is the prevailing cold winds for wintertime. But they put the reducer stick on there with the smallest hole. They get that positive airflow all winter long. They never have no ceiling. Never have moisture rain out in their hives. Some of them even get a little more creative. They put plastic pipes on them, to vent. And they're successful with single dupes that way. So, I guess you can tell, I've yet to find one scientist that'll sign off on a double deep or a screen bottom. Not a single one. And I meet with them at every conference. Every one. Next question.
Have you ever thought about, I don't know how expensive just the heater element is, but of actually installing it right as you put the hive together, and basically that's your bottom board, and then have it cut, with a connector.
You just quick
connect and disconnect, so you move the controller around and
instead of
and I don't know what
We're
possibilities that is.
We're actually working on that for the commercial bee industry. They do things a lot different. They have a pallet, and the top of the pallet is a solid board, plywood. They have metal snaps, and they actually take this hive body, if you'll hold that up, and that's their beehive, because they're not in it for honey, they're only for pollination. They snap that in place in 4 locations on that wooden pallet. They are so desperate I got a beekeeper in Northern California called me 2.5 months back. He'd seen my product that was being used in the industry, he'd seen the results. And he said, when you gonna have a commercial unit? I said, I don't think y'all pay for it, I don't think it's feasible, it's gonna be too expensive. He said, it's not about the money anymore. He said, I got 10,000 hives. I spent $250,000 in pesticides, and I lost 5,000 hives last year. I haven't made a dime, all I'm doing is survive in the last 5 or 6, 7 years. Hackenberg, out of Pennsylvania, I spent 3 days with them, same situation. They managed 2,000 hives, pollinate in Florida for the oranges. They leave from there and go to the almond fields. They come back to the Florida-Georgia state line. They juice them up, they treat them for mites. They leave there, they go to upstate New York for apples. From there, they go to Maine for the blueberries. They come back to Pennsylvania for the pumpkins, and then back to Georgia for the winter. He loses 1,000 hives every year, and he spends $50,000 in chemicals. And he's trying to get me to buy his business. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. I'm 66 years old. They do this with 3 people. It's amazing to watch. They will load 100 pallets, 4 hives per pallet, per hour for transport. Just remarkable. And while they're doing that, they're actually popping the tops off, putting the sugar water in to the feeders there, and putting the tops back on. They have 2 people on the ground, and Davey Hackenberg is on the tow motor loading them. They put a net over them, and they go over the road. But the losses every year in the commercial industry is just absolutely killing them. But yes, we may, what we're looking at there is we're going to have one controller that'll run 4 of these thermal belts. They're going to be embedded in a custom pallet with the snaps, so that the commercial beekeepers will pull up their hives on a pallet right there, unsnap them, put them on my pallet, treat them, take them off, and do another. And with some of the numbers, some of them are going to have 10 or 15 of my units there to be able to take care of their treatment issues. We've done some preliminary testing. I don't have a unit, but I've got commercial beekeepers in North Texas. They actually cannot allow their bees to leave the state until they're inspected. If they have a high mite count, they're pulled off the transport. Well, they just never even get loaded on the transport. So the mite's here to stay. The temperature will terminate everything in that hive except the bee. Had a North Carolina inspector that came by and watched us do a setup, a mite kill. Upon removal of the unit, you can see some of the sticky boards here. Those are 72-hour counts. You'll find mites on there, you'll find dead small hive beetles, and then there was a little old fly that looked like an F-16 fighter jet. And I go, what is this? And the response was, a lot of things live in our hives that are not detrimental to our bees. The main thing is varroa, small hive beetle, and that 2-legged problem. I think we all know who the 2 legs belong to. The other product that I'm helping these Australians get off the ground is what they call a beetle buster bottom board. And I've tested it, and there's been a lot of testimonies already coming in. Yes, if you would. If you look closely, this looks like a corrugated roof surface, but that material is so slick. So then your hive body goes on top here. So a small hive beetle flies in, and here's what happens. Small hive beetle's front 2 legs are steering. Hind legs have the little spikes on them where they can dig and go. They hit this slick surface, they can't go anywhere. Ooh, opportunity for the guard bees. The holes drilled in here are exactly the right size. The largest member of the small hive beetle family is the female. They fall through. If you'll turn it around, there's a nice nice little slide tray right here. And I have a hard time pronouncing this word, diamatris earth?
Close enough.
Close enough? You put a small thin coating in there, small high beetle falls through, ooh, I've got traction. Ooh, I'm sliced all to pieces. So I flew to Missouri. They had these mounted in an apiary. The field was such an open field, it totally disproved the fact that small hive beetles don't show up when you got sunlight all the time. It was probably 800 to 1,000 yards in any direction before you saw a tree. So we're doing a mite kill. At the same time, there's small hive beetles flying in every 3 to 5 minutes. So we just happened, after about 10 minutes into it, slid the tray out, and we had a pattern of every hole of dead small hive beetles and 8 to 10 mites in every hole that's in this corrugated board. 10 minutes. The reason we still have to go 2.5 hours is the problem is under the cap brood. We can take care of a lot of the mites in the first 30 minutes, but you have to penetrate that honeycomb to terminate the mite under the cap brood.
You said something earlier about dead mites in the cap brood, the bees will go in and clean it out. So don't you lose some percentage of your bees to that? I mean, if you really have an infestation, say 100%, you lose all your bees, all your brood.
Well, that's true, but at that point in time, you're at collapse already. Okay? They will remove only the larvae that's contaminated, because they smell the decomposing mite.
So if 20% are contaminated, you lose 20% of your bees. They'll pick them out.
New bees that were emerging out.
Right.
But here's the thing, those bees are no good. Guess why? They're contaminated with a virus, they're anemic, they have deformed wings, and they're not productive. And the studies have proved that for many years. So you're in a spiral already. But that's where if you treat in the spring, around August and September 1st, and in the fall, the numbers show, in my numbers, there's one sticky board here that shows not many mites on it. There wasn't hardly any on there, and that's because that hive had been treated in the spring. The rest of them, like this one right here, was a virgin hive. It was like treated in August. There's 800 to 900 mites here. I actually went to the University of Delaware, carried units. We did testing up there. They were averaging virgin units, virgin hives in August. Beautiful place in West Virginia. We went to stayed in cabins. They were averaging over 400 dead mites just in an initial thermal treatment. 700 threshold to 1,000 or more in 72 hours. Now they put me up against OA, which I knew wasn't going to work because you're not supposed to use it with brood as present. So they did a dribble, fogger, and other product on hives. They lost 50% of those hives within 4 weeks. Half of them. My hives bounced back strong and made it all the way through the war. But the thing about universities is you have to apply for grants and wait. I got units at 5 universities right now waiting on grant money to get a 1-year study. But it looks like a group in Texas has the money, and we're going to get a study started here next year. This is just a large beekeeping club. They've had so many units involved and they're so excited about the results. They said, we got to get this study done and get the data published.
I was curious if you could leave the heating element in there all the time, you could switch out the high-powered unit and just use a very low-powered unit. What about keeping it warm through the winter? I've heard some good studies on keeping it warm, and they use less resources, and they're stronger when they come out ready for the spring.
I've done that. I've had new bees emerging January 1st. And the queen lays off the temperature. You can actually program this unit and put it in there. Put a set point between 88 and 90 degrees. You have no cluster. They consume less food. And it works. But here's the problem. I've tested it in different places all over the country. In extreme cold weather, the power output on it is continuously running, and then we end up actually farming bees instead of producing bees. There's only, I just don't trust it yet. We're doing more testing this winter in Michigan and Ohio and Indiana. I've done it for 2 years in a row, and it's just amazing to see. At 42 degrees, bees would come out on their mating flight. 42 degrees in the wintertime. And boy, that box is slammed full of bees as soon as the pilot gets in, they explode. But there's going to have to be some more work there before we actually start making that a feature.
Now, you talked about a double, full-size box, double full-size box. I run 3 machines. That's
Perfect. I love you. Do you rotate them for your splits?
Yeah.
That-
I've done one split.
Okay. That is becoming a very popular process.
So what do you do?
You can treat 3 mediums because it's actually slightly less than a double D.
So you would treat it like a 1?
No,
You treat it like a 2?
treat it like a 3. The sensor always goes in the bottom. It's going to take a little longer to get there, but not near as long as a
The
double D.
sensor goes on top of the 3rd one?
No.
No, the sensor always goes in the very bottom, whether it's even as a medium. Here's what happens. You think about it in the wintertime. All right, you got the wood stove going. It's starting to crank up pretty good. You've been gone a couple of days. Your temperature builds at the ceiling and builds down. That's the same thing we're doing with this insulation board. We have to build that temperature to ensure we kill all the mice from that board back down to that sensor. The sensor has to be in the bottom. For that, I mean, I tested it both ways and used thermistors. And one thing that was interesting early on in the testing, I had about 40 expensive sensors in a single pipeline. And I'm tweaking the program on this controller for about 3 months. And what I was seeing was slight deviations on the inside walls, some corners, across about 5 frames, everything was perfect at set point temperature. And finally one day I said, you know what? I'm just going to put the bees in the equation and see what happens. Now I got an Excel spreadsheet, I got my laptop plugged in, I got a monitor controller that is collecting that data, transmitting it into my laptop. The bees turn the inside into a convection oven. They're trying to drive the temperature down, and here are all these sensors, everything, they had slight deviations. Click, 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 click. Did perfect. I got an exact temperature throughout the entire hive body that I wanted to accomplish. And I'm like, I wasted 3 months trying to do it my way. Why not let the bees do it their way? Next question.
So those hive beetles can fly, right?
Oh, yeah.
There ain't nothing else comes in and lays eggs or nothing like that. I mean, except the beetle itself.
The beetle itself. Now, Richard Guest is the president of Waterbury Club down in Camden, South Carolina. He bought a unit in July a year ago at South Carolina Convention, went home, started doing my kills, and I know it looks like I need to finish up. He got to his last hive, and he'd lost it. Didn't even know it had collapsed. And it had wax moths. And he's standing there and he goes, well, I'm gonna treat it anyway. I just want to see. So he went out there on treatment. Well, it killed black moths and the worms. And he said, Lynn, you know what? You save your brood frames, because now all you gotta do is little cutouts where the worms were. But you take it out and turn it upside down at an angle and hit the front entrance violently, and all the dead worms hit the ground, and my chickens loved it. She's a hoot, and trust me, that's the truth. I know him well enough. All right, time's up. I'm gonna turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you.